To the HTMX, KISS to the max. KISS, everybody knows what KISS is, of course. Keep it simple, stupid. And that's really one of the ideas behind HTMX, to keep it simple. Something about me. Long ago, I was raised as a chemist, but, well, started to do a lot of computer stuff very soon, and then the internet came, and I really was hooked onto web technology, so then that was it. Started Python already quite a while ago in 1999, and I'm still loving it, so that's the reason I'm still go to Pygrunn every year, etc. I ran a Python company myself. Lots of frameworks like Django, Pyramid, and Flask are being used, and also Plone. Who here knows Plone? Ah, some people. Because it's almost vanished from the Netherlands, but it's still there. And after that, I started freelancing, and I'm doing it already for 13 years. So this is the agenda of my talk: an introduction about hypermedia, and then about HTMX, what actually is it, and then a demo. At most part of explaining HTMX is through the demo, so that's why I need the computer. And then some concluding remarks and time for questions. All right, what is hypermedia? So we all know media, like a book or a movie or whatever. And the new thing, and those are all linear. And the new thing about hypermedia at that time was that it's not linear anymore, because you can branch to other locations. We all now take this for granted, of course, but at that time it was quite new. So that was really, well, one of the big things coming with HTML. HTML is a hypermedia because it has these hyperlinks. And of course it's a very successful hypermedia because the whole internet is running on HTML. So hyperlinks are connecting, and you can navigate through this information with these hyperlinks. We have some controls like the anchor and the forum tag that you can use to do server interaction. So the server can give you specific information back based on what you're asking with your tag. And a forum even enables you to send specific information to the server. And of course, browsers nowadays are really advanced. They are like operating systems in themselves. You can do a lot of stuff with just a browser. So it supports caching, history, bookmarking, etc. And of course, the whole JavaScript ecosystem is all in the browser. Something about REST. So REST, everybody knows REST, and says, I'm doing a RESTful API. It stands for Representational State Transfer. It was invented, or, well, coined by a guy, Roy Fielding. But actually, what we're doing nowadays most of the time are those JSON APIs. But actually, that is not what he meant with REST. Even then, it was not available at all. It was all XML at that time. Actually, so what we are now calling REST is not really what he meant with REST. Just as a reminder. The thing he came up with, well, one of the things he came up with, one is HOS, so hypermedia as the engine of application state. So when you have an application, everything is controlled by the server through hypermedia controls. So this is, well, a bit of a vague explanation. Maybe I have some examples. So for instance, something like this. So this is like a contacts application. So what you see at the top, that is what HOS is doing. It gives you information, but also it gives you links. So these are the links that are, well, the actions you can do. What you see at the bottom is what we're doing nowadays most of the time with these JSON APIs. So it just gives you back the data, but your application needs to know what can be done with the data, something like an archive action. So it needs to know in some way, somebody told, or there is like maybe documentation or whatever, but there is a split between what the server is offering as JSON and what the application needs to know to work with this application. So for instance, when I have clicked archive in a HTMX application, I get back the response you see at the top, and then I can unarchive, so undo my action. But in a JSON application, the application needs to know that after an archive, the next possible action is unarchive. So this information needs to go into your JavaScript application. So that's really a difference between everything is known on the server, the browser only needs to show things, and there's nothing else, just show what's coming back. So for instance, when there is a new action, like I can send a message to one of those contacts, that's something the application doesn't know. So you have to programming that in your JavaScript application. So there's really this split between it's all coming from the server, or I also need like a smart application in JavaScript. Enter HTMX. So the guy you see in the picture, that's Carsten Gross, and he invented HTMX. It's built on those principles. It's really, well, he wrote a book about it also, and he starts his introduction with this HTOS explanation. One of the big changes, of course, is what you can do is you can target any element for updates. So you have a page has a lot of elements like divs, whatever. Usually in a classic application, when you send something like you click on a hyperlink, you get a full page back. So that's the whole screen redraws. That's quite a big operation. Of course, browsers are really fast, so normally it's not a problem. But he invented that you can just specifically update a part of the screen, like a div or whatever. And that's what we're all doing now, of course, with those JavaScript applications. They all do these partial updates, like the single-page applications. But now you can do it without a JavaScript, writing any JavaScript. So that's very new and I think a very genius invention. And also the other thing is that any element can trigger HTTP requests. I showed you, like in HTML, you only have the anchor and you have the form. That are the only tags you can trigger something on the server. But now, now it's different because any event can be triggered from a div or a span or whatever. And it supports all the HTTP verbs, because a form, that's the only thing that supports a post in classic HTML. So for put whatever patch, you need JavaScript to talk to the server. So now you can use all those HTTP verbs from every element on the screen. So that's really new. And cut the crap, what I mean by that is that, well, we all know those huge libraries like Angular or what have you, all those different big frameworks, changing all the time, so you have to keep up, you have to keep updating, etc. It's a lot of maintenance, and now you just cut this whole layer from your application. You only need HTML. That's much easier. I'm going to show how it works. So what I did, I wrote a small application to explain what is going on in HTMX. And we're all now in this lovely city of Groningen. So what I wrote was an application to pick a hotel. Maybe you think, okay, Groningen is such a lovely place. I want to go back. I'll be there for like a holiday of a couple of days or something. So we can use this application to pick a hotel in Groningen. So now we're going to see HTMX in action. So what I do is I start typing. So this is the classical type ahead we all know. But now this is under the hood. It's different because when I type this, we see these two entries appearing, and I have a request log. And what happens here, there was a request going to the server. And it has something called target. I'm going to explain it. But the response, that's interesting, is only a small fragment of HTML. So it's not a whole page refresh, but only a specific part of the screen. That's what we saw here. So only these two buttons, those are in the response. And that's really one of the big advantages of HTMX, that you just update a very small part of the screen. I'll also show it here on the. This is the code of the application, and I'm going to show you some parts of it. Let me see. something wrong with the resolution. This is it. So this is actually, well, the most important part of what HTMX is doing. So what we have here is an input. So we type this name of the hotel. And then we have specific attributes. And that's how HTMX is working. So when we type, it starts to get from an endpoint on the server, which is the search endpoint, what is triggering this action. And this is quite an elaborate trigger. Normally it's just clicking something or changing something. But for this, for the type ahead, you need something more. So this is saying there is something input. It needs to be changed. So you have to change what you're typing. There's also a delay because maybe you're trying different things on your keyboard. It has to wait a little bit. This is people building these type heads know how it works. And there is another event that's called search. That's just a standard event of the browser that can also trigger this action. And what it's doing, that's another important part, is the target. So it's not a full page refresh, but only this div with ID hotel results. That's in the target. And we can just use CSS selectors here to say what the target is of our action. So what's coming back from the server, we saw this small fragment with the list of hotels. And that's going into this div. And another thing is swap. That means that we're not going to replace the full div, but we're only replacing the inner part of this div. So that's how it works. Okay, we're going to try to select a hotel. Let me see, for instance, this one. So what happens now? The whole screen is being refreshed with what we... it's not the whole screen, a part of the screen, so the top is staying there, but this part is I call it the content part, that's being replaced. And again, I can see this in the application, so when I say continue, for instance, sorry, I have to go to another screen. That's, let me see. Selected. So here I have selected a hotel, and what I get back is another screen with what we saw. We can continue or go back. So that's the first part, and I'm going to the second part. That is to select some dates. What we're using here is just the regular date entry from the browser. So this is a very standard way of picking. We can of course have fancy date pickers, but this is just what the browser gives you. And what we see immediately when I entered one date, it says pick both dates. So that's again HTMX in doing this. So when I go to the dates screen, what I see here is I have the from and the to date. Also both HTMX. They are triggering a check URL, so an endpoint doing the check. How is it triggered? When the date changes. So that's the trigger. So that's a very simple trigger. And then the target is date status. You can see that's the div over here. So that's the only part that changes. Another interesting thing here is the HX include, because when the request goes to the backend, I send, of course, this date, but also I need to send the hotel I picked, so this hotel ID, and also maybe the to date. In this time, it was not already filled here, but it has to pick those three things and send it back, and that's being done with the HX include, because what it says, when the request goes back to the backend, also include data from the whole form. So that's what this HX include is doing. Let me show the endpoints. So here I have the endpoints in Flask. This is a Flask application, and here I have the check endpoint I have been calling. What it does, it just picks up the hotel. This is just a query with SQL Alchemy, and then I parse both of the dates. When one of the dates is not filled, I get a incomplete status. Another one is when I have both dates, but the from date is bigger than the to date, then I get an invalid range. And this is also an interesting thing I'm going to show you. Of course, I have to check if this date range is available. So then I get an unavailable answer. I'll show you. So let me, for instance, say from the 10th to the 14th. Now I get this answer not available. So this is what's happening. I can also show it here. So the response coming back here is just this small fragment of HTML. And let me show you the date status. So this is a very small fragment. By the way, this is all done by Jinja. Are people not familiar with Jinja? This is just one of the big templating engines in the Python world. But now what it does, it checks this state, and then based on the state, it gives you a response. So in this case, the date was not available. So then I get some extra information which date actually is not available. That's the Thursday. So I have to change this and try this one. It should work. And I see that's available. So now I get another response. Only this small fragment is being updated with information about the dates I just selected. Another interesting thing to show is on this screen, when I go back. So that's again the dates template. So we have the from and the to date. And then we have the button going back. When we go back, it just renders, it does a get to the index. But the index is the full HTML of the whole page. But an interesting thing is that there's another HTMX thing that's called HX select, and it just picks one specific part, which is the wizard, from the response. So it gets the full response, and then it picks out one specific part and use that part to render the screen. So that's another nice feature of HTMX. All right, so now we have picked our date, and we continue to the room. We get a confirmed. And again, this confirmed, I'll show you. So when we continue to the room, we just get a commit, a submit of the whole form. So it gets all the information, and then it updates not the whole screen, but this content part of the screen. All right. So now I have to pick a room, of course. Let's see. So I pick a medium room, and immediately this has been updated on the screen. I'll show you here. So this is the response, and only a small fragment of HTML is being sent back when I picked the specific room. I'll show you here. So we have rooms over here, and we can see this is a list, because it's a for loop, a list of radio buttons, and again HTMX. So it triggers on change. So as I click one of those radio buttons, again it uses this include. So it takes the whole content of the form to send back to the server. It goes back to the summarize endpoint, and what it does, the target is the summary. So that's this small div over here. So let's have a look at this summarize code. So here are the endpoints. Oh, I'm too far. Yeah, this is the summarize. So this is just an endpoint that, again, checks the dates and gets the size we just clicked on, and fetches the breakfast, which is just a Boolean if you want to have breakfast or not. And then it renders the whole summary. And the way it does, there is this small function that calculates a summary about what we filled in, and it renders the whole data in the summary. So this is a very small fragment, and when it's not complete, actually from the browser it's not really possible to make an incomplete request here, but it's just for completeness that we added this if statement. But this is what's happening. We get a calculation of the total cost that's being that the hotel will cost. And the calculation of this summary is over here. So there's just calculating based on the dates, etc. What the whole stay will cost. Is anybody seeing any flaw in this application at the moment? Yeah?
I'm tempted to say that page refresh. If you refresh the tab, where do you land? What keeps track of
Yeah, that's another thing. Oh, it's not what I was aiming at, but that's something I can answer later on. But the problem with this small demo application is that the whole cost for is the same for every hotel. So I didn't look up different room prices for different hotels, but it's just for the demo. All right. So now we have our, well, let's include breakfast. You can see it's just updates with the price for the breakfast, and we can continue. All right. So we have the confirmation. Again, this whole, well, content part of the screen is being updated, and we go to the details. So now we can accept the conditions and fill in our name. So let's fill in our name, and I say confirm. And then you see, of course, I have to click this. And well, we are all used to use JavaScript for this, but in this particular case, of course, it's HTMX. We don't use JavaScript, but we have our own well, callback to the server, actually. What's happening here is that, sorry, that's the wrong one. The name one, that's it. So here you have this this last screen where you enter your details, your name, etc. But when we forget to enter this the terms, so we didn't click on the terms, we got back, and we can see it over here. No, that's not the right one. That's the one. Yeah, this is one. No, another one. These are all also the requests going to the, sorry?
Higher, I think there was terms here.
Oh yeah, this is the one, yeah. No, these are the ones when I show the code. So these requests are also in my request browser. That's a bit of a bit annoying, but oh yeah, this is the one, I think. Yeah. So here it says that you have to accept the terms and conditions. So again, this is a very small response, but there is one particular new thing on this response. That's it has an extra header, HX request. Because what happens here is that usually when you submit this, the target is the wizard, and the wizard is the whole content part of the screen. But actually in HTMX, when something comes back from the server, you can also change the target. So in this case, we don't want to update the whole screen, but only this particular part where it says you have to accept the terms and conditions. So that's another nice trick that HTMX gives you, and it has a lot of these headers that you can use to tinker the behavior of your application. All right, so this is almost the last. I have to click this and confirm. And that's, well, I made my reservation, so now it's all complete. Maybe I can answer your question. What we see here, when I go back and forth in the application, you can see that the URL in the browser doesn't change. So it means when I refresh the browser, I just go back to the first page. And I just mentioned those specific headers you can send back. You can use those headers to update the URL in the browser. So it means you can make sure that when somebody refreshes, there is the right URL in the browser, so you get to the right page. So it's, but I didn't do it for this demo application. All right. So it was the end of the demo. Some concluding remarks. So when should we use HTMX? Well, I think it's great for things like CRUD applications, so simple applications to update some list of whatever contacts, or also for content-heavy sites like content management systems, you can add specific stuff using HTMX. And of course, for forms and for validation, usually we are now really used to do a lot of validation in JavaScript on the browser, but in HTMX you can do it on the server, and then it's of course much safer because it's when you do it with JavaScript only, of course, and your API doesn't support this validation, you can make big errors. Well, of course, for server-side rendered apps that really need the server for heavy rendering, it's very convenient to use HTMX, and you don't use it for huge interactive applications. So for moderate interactivity, like I showed with this wizard, it's perfect. But like when you have a complex client-side state, like for a game, for instance, or like for Google Drive, where you're like working on a document, it's not really a good fit because it's too much going back and forth to the server. And of course, also not a good fit for real-time collaboration. Like for instance, working on a document together, that's not really you want to do with HTMX, these kind of applications. And for data visualization, you have those nice JavaScript libraries for showing bar charts, pie chart, whatever, maybe even changing based on the data. That's all done on the browsers. It's not something you want to do with HTMX. And of course, you have those offline first applications that really still need to work when you're offline. And for HTMX, as I showed you, you really need the browser. So that's not a good fit. All right, time for questions.